Everybody, welcome back to another episode of the True Safety Podcast. It's not quite the new year. We're recording this in one of the last few days of 2021. But I'm here with Apolonia, Rockwell. Apolonia, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing awesome. I'm super excited. I really can't believe that this is a week before the New Year's. Like, this is wild. I can't believe this year just flew by in like seconds, it seems like. So.
I know. Yeah, it's flown by. So we wanted to take an episode and just kind of look back on the last year and look back on like what you learned in the safety industry in 2021. And so kind of just thinking through like what stuck, maybe there's some things that you didn't think would stick around that did, really just reflecting on what's changed in the industry over the last year, so that hopefully all of us can be more informed heading into 2022. So, first off, Apolonia, what are some of the key lessons you feel like you've learned or seen in the safety industry over the last 12 months of 2021?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I feel like technology is the biggest thing that comes to mind. Honestly, I think that safety has always, in my experience, it's always been the safety industry has been the last to adopt new trends, new things, and new ways of thinking. When I started in safety, I just remember that the way that we were learning had advanced beyond, death by PowerPoint, but safety industry specifically, I just felt was so behind with technology, behind with trends, behind with learning. And so one thing that safety that was always stuck in the past in the industry was just the utilization of technology and really banning online learning when it came to certain categories and topics. And so COVID really propelled that for us. And it stuck. I really didn't think it would. So for an example, like monthly safety meetings, once companies were able to gather back together, the majority of our clients didn't. Like the majority of our clients that had to go to virtual safety meetings, yes, there were some that were really excited to go back to monthly safety meetings in person, and they did. But some companies continued with a hybrid, and we're like, all right, for the people that do want to continue on with monthly safety meetings, that's fine, but we're going to keep our virtual options open. So that way we can still, keep on for the employees that weren't able to make it. So I thought that would completely go out the window, but a lot of companies kept on with it.
Well, I think we saw, we've talked about this example before, but even with like Safeland classes, how before the pandemic, they were not doing them virtually. It was all in person. And so we provided them in person. But then obviously once everything shut down in March of 2020, then, people still need to take Safeland because they still need to be working, and, oil industry still needed to keep their wheels turning. So they switched to virtual. And so then I think for a while we were wondering like, well, will this just be a trend? And even I think into 2021, we saw them, I don't know if they formally said that, it's always going to be virtual or that they're, both will always be an option, but we kind of saw where they probably could have gone back to, only in person, but then they realized, it's advantageous for us to offer both. And so I think there was a lot of technology solutions where people were almost forced into adapting technology in ways that they weren't open to before. And then now that things are a bit more normal, they're realizing, there's actually benefits. Like we don't necessarily need to go back to the way things were before.
No, yeah, you're exactly right. And Safeland is a prime example because they still are allowing us to have these virtual classes. And I just remember, you remember too, that we'd get emails month by month. Like next month we're banning, we're going back to all in person. Next month there will not be any virtual options. There's not going to be virtual options. And they just kept allowing it month by month, and that's where we're still at. And so you're exactly right. We were forced into it, and it stayed because just look at the world that we're in. Look at what we're facing right now. We're facing COVID round 2, really, but it's like round 6 and 7 and 8 with different versions and of of the pandemic in a way. Like we're experiencing it all over again. And so these virtual options are going to remain. And one thing too with training, I feel like that was the biggest thing that changed for companies was training and how we learn. Yes, with SafeLand is a good example, but just like virtual classes in general. So having not just online classes, but virtual. So they're live. And it is a safety manager holding a safety meeting, or maybe it is a specific type of training. And I think companies realize, hey, I'm able to reach our employees in Texas or our employees that are out of state. And this is a new way of training that I never imagined possible. I never imagined going this route. I was always concerned about engagement. I was concerned about XYZ, but we just were able to make it. We were forced to make it work. So I feel like training was the biggest thing that changed.
Yeah, it definitely did. Were there any lessons that stuck out for you kind of with some of your clients, maybe as they were adapting to that, maybe some things that your team learned as you were just trying to help your clients make that adaptation to doing more virtual training?
I think another thing that I learned in 2021 was how much culture mattered to an organization. And, it's a no-brainer that culture is important, and morale, that's the lifeblood of a company. But I don't know that companies really experienced that or saw that firsthand until post-pandemic, because sure, when we were in the thick of it, people were afraid. There was, in all levels of organizations, people were afraid because there was so much unknown. Well, now we were heading into post-pandemic and things were starting to get back to normal, but there was still unknown. And so because of that, communication was so important to the frontline team members of organizations, because I think that people were still so scared. So that constant communication of what was going to be around the next corner from leadership was vital. And that affected overall morale and culture, and just the pulse of the company became so important. I think in 2021, I think that this was a big year for communication, for transparency, for, leaders to show their vulnerabilities. I think that was a huge, huge piece in 2021.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because in a time of uncertainty, I think that's really when leadership shines, or a lack of leadership shines. And so I think there was a lot of people that, there was just so much uncertainty. Even I think, 2020 was kind of the main lockdown year, but then coming into 2021, it was like, okay, well, what's the path back to normal? What are things going to be look like? I think people wanted to have a confidence in a plan. And I think even in leadership from safety professionals specifically, because I think companies wanted to know that there was a plan to get back to work safely.
Yeah.
So I definitely see that. Was there anything that surprised you about kind of the safety industry over the last year?
Really, my mind still goes to technology. I mean, I think it surprised me that companies, I didn't know if it would be a fad almost in a way where trainings went virtual. Online training was the way that companies were going to continue to onboard their employees. Like, yes, companies were forced into doing those things at first. And I was surprised that maintained throughout last year, when things were starting to go back to normal and people were able to group up, but keeping on with, virtualizing is what I like to call it. Their new hire orientation, like that stayed, because companies realized that this was an effective move. Like, it was effective to go to online training for new hire orientation, for your monthly safety meetings. And so keeping those things on really surprised me. Let me think of some other things. really in the training, in the safety space, then training, of course. One thing I haven't really thought about until now is that so this year, 2021, I'm trying to think of the actual phrase of what it's called, but I know some people were labeling this year as like the grand, what's it called?
The Great Resignation.
The Great Resignation. I'm glad you could read my mind virtually. The Great Resignation. So I was just talking about this with our CFO, is that how hard it has been for companies of all sizes, of all industries, to retain talent, and how much of an opportunity that continues to be for, as a safety consulting company, because companies have had a really hard time keeping their in-house safety professional and growing that person. And so it's been an opportunity for us this last year to be a staple in companies' safety programs, because their companies are not having to worry, how do I retain my safety manager? How do I grow the safety manager? How do I know that I'm not going to invest in freaking safely train the trainer, first aid train the trainer, equipment train the trainer, and invest thousands of trainings, and then the safety director leaves for the company next door. How do I know that they're going to stay? And so investing in a safety consulting company has been really advantageous for our clients, because they know that we're not going to leave them high and dry the next month. And that's a real concern for our clients, is that it's just they're already struggling on finding laborers, as finding technicians, finding leadership levels, project managers. The last thing that our clients have to worry about is the consistency and keeping the momentum that they've been building up on their safety program. That remains the same. It's the last freaking thing that they have to worry about.
Yeah. And secret to the audience, we usually record a couple episodes at once. So I know that on our next episode, where we're talking about kind of the pros and cons of outsourcing, we'll probably get into this.
Absolutely.
But it's interesting to think about the Great Resignation, because in that sense, it has been risky having an individual and your loyalty, your hopes as a business attached to the individual has been shaky this year, because people have been moving on to other jobs or moving up, and people have, it's really true. There's so many people that have resigned and moved on to other jobs. But if they hire a company like yourself, they hire a third party, then, even if you have people moving jobs in and out of true safety, people have the security of knowing that a true safety consultant is going to have the training, going to have the culture, going to have the understanding, as opposed to hoping, that you can find one person and then another person. So it's interesting, because there has been so much instability in the workforce, but I think you're totally right that it has shown that there can be a lot of benefits to having a third party consultant, that, initially it becomes, your job becomes hiring the right consultants and bringing the right people in, but your clients can just trust that, Apollonia's got it taken care of.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's the same in the accounting space. It's right now, on the business, people know True Safety, they know me, but on the business side of things, the personal business side of things, is that, we outsource our accounting and and that's just a relief for me, that I don't have to worry about growing and retaining an accountant. That's something that's outsourced, and I don't have to worry about if that person leaves or not. And that has been the case, where our accounting company, somebody has left within that organization. And that's okay because my books were still maintained and everything was okay because they just filled that spot who just had to learn my account. But there were still people at that business that knew true safety and knew, all the ins and outs of the business. So it was seamless. It was a seamless transition, even though a new account rep was assigned to me. So it's just one less thing that I have to worry about.
Yeah. I think that's a good example and a good illustration of it. As we head into this new year, what would kind of your encouragement be to safety professionals heading into 2022 that are maybe worried, maybe, I don't know, they're just looking back at the uncertainty of the last couple of years and wondering, is it always going to be this way? Or, what would your words be to safety professionals heading into this next year?
Yeah, I would absolutely say learn and evolve and adapt. And I think this is what really excites me as a safety professional is if you're ending the year, kind of having those thoughts that you just said, like, what can I focus on? Like, what can I really achieve next year? Like, be the best in your space. Like, there's so much moving and changing in the safety world with OSHA regulations that it's exciting to me to be the best in the space. So relearning and re-diving in, like re-becoming the expert in your space is what's super, super exciting to me. And so there's a lot of opportunity to be the best. Like there's a lot of people that are just, average safety professionals, average accountants, average this or that, but like be the best, like be the beacon in your space. Cause it's less crowded there. Right. Yeah. And so, that's really exciting. Yeah. And then also just embrace the technology side of things. There's going to be a lot of AR and VR up and coming in our world. And the way we learn is evolving and changing. So like embrace that, don't resist that, and just embrace it this next year. So that's what I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's well said. I think when everything from the last year, I think one thing heading into this next year is that a safety professional and an employee that is committed to becoming better and better and is loyal to a company, loyal to their people, there's only more opportunity for them to have opportunity to move up and for them to have opportunity, especially with how much people are shuffling jobs all around and people are wanting to leave. Like the people that say, I want to do as good as I can here. There's plenty of opportunity there for the people that will be learners. So
absolutely.
It'll be fun. We'll have to compare this episode to the one we do this time next year and see what we learn over the next 12 months. But Apolonia, thank you for sharing some of your lessons and learnings from this last year.
Absolutely. Yeah. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good.